Today I'm going to be showing you how to make the welt pocket on the storm zip-up pattern. You need your bodice piece and your pocket piece. If you've made the color block bodice, all steps are exactly the same. At this point in the tutorial, you will have already constructed your color block front bodice, so you will have a front bodice with the same shape. You'll just have the color blocking. I'm using these two pieces of fabric today because they have a very clear right and wrong side. Both of these fabrics have a very different looking right and wrong side, and that will help you see throughout each step of the process what we're doing. To start, make sure that you have your markings transferred to your pattern pieces. You need to have the placement line marked on the right side of your bodice, and you need to have the pocket marking done on the wrong side of the pocket piece. I've already drawn that here. If you are using the paper template to transfer your pocket marking, you will do that by laying your pocket piece and then placing your paper template right along the edge like that, and then you will transfer this marking here. You need this rectangle and the center line and Y marks. So you're going to transfer this onto your fabric. Show you mine on this side, just like this. First, you're going to rotate your bodice so that it is laid out in front of you like this, with the arm's eye and side seam up and the center line of your bodice down. That's going to give you a little bit nicer of an angle to work with and make it easier to see in the tutorial. You'll lay your pocket piece right sides together on your bodice, and you are going to align the short raw edge that is on the same side of the pocket as you're marking with that line on your bodice that you drew. So the short edge of your pocket is going to be perfectly in line with the placement marking you drew. Once you have that just in line, make sure that your pocket piece is laid out really flat and nice. And now you're going to pin. When you pin, you're just going to place pins in a couple different places. You just want to anchor that, but you're going to be sewing on the green line here, so make sure your pins aren't in the way of that. Now you're going to take this to your sewing machine and you're going to sew the outer rectangle of your marking. So you are going to sew this line here. You are not going to sew the center line or the little Y marks. Do not sew those. You're only sewing this rectangle. Use a short straight stitch and be careful to pivot in the corners so you get nice sharp corners. And for the cleanest rectangle, what I like to do is start and stop on one of these straight lines. Don't try to start or stop in a corner. Make sure to back stitch as well. Okay, so now I have sewn that rectangle. You can see the stitches go around that rectangle, but not through the middle. And now you're going to cut that middle line and the Y marks. My favorite way to do this is to start this center line here with a rotary cutter. So I would take it to my cutting mat and use a rotary cutter like this and cut right along just the middle of that center line because I can get a really nice straight line started. Then I'll use a pair of scissors to cut these lines here. You want to cut right to this point and then into each corner. And you want to snip with your scissors as close into these corners as you can get without cutting through your stitches. The closer into that corner you can get, the better your corners will be on your finished pocket. You're cutting through both layers of fabric when you do this. So you will take it over to your cutting mat and grab your scissors and cut that now. All right, so you can see I've cut those lines and I've cut all the way through the pocket. At this point, you no longer need the lines that you drew. You're done with those. So when you take this over to your ironing board and press, it's okay if those lines get erased if you used a heat erasable pen. Now what you're going to do is we need to flip the whole pocket piece through the opening here. But first, you're going to press it, because if you press it now on these lines, it's just going to be even cleaner when you flip it. So what you're going to do is press along this seam allowance. You just take this little short edge and press right along there. And you're also going to press here, right along that seam there. Make sure it's all the way pressed, really nice right there. If you do that before you flip the whole pocket through, it's going to be even cleaner. So you'll press that, and then after you press it, you're going to flip the whole pocket through. So I'm going to take this to my ironing board and press, and then we'll go to the next step. Okay, so after you have done your pressing each way, you'll take your whole pocket piece and push it through the opening. When you push it through the opening, you're then going to flip the whole bodice wrong side up. So we had it like this. Now we're going to have it like this. Okay. So I have the wrong side of my bodice facing up, and now I can see the right side of my pocket. Once your pocket is pulled all the way through, you should have a really nice rectangular opening there, and you're going to press this really well. And you want that really crisp and clean, and you want the pocket fully brought through. So you'll take this to your ironing board and press. After you've pressed this really well, the next step is to take this longer edge of your pocket and bring it all the way up like that. But the seam allowance should stay pressed down here. So it's going to be pressed all the way up here, where you can see this portion of your seam allowance. It's got your pocket and your bodice parts right there. Then take your pocket piece and you're going to fold it back down, wrong sides together, so like this, but we're going to leave this folded here. So we're only folding it partway back down so that it's overlapping itself. And we're going to just bring it folded down enough that we're creating a crease that will sit right in the pocket opening. So if I pinch these parts of the fabric where the pocket is folded over itself and bring it back, you'll see there's my pocket opening. This crease should sit right into that opening. It shouldn't sit up here. You want it right at the opening. So if it's not there, make whatever adjustments you need to make so that it is. So again, if I take this, if I press what I've done flat with one hand and fold this back, you'll see this is where that fold is. Almost like you're creating a little N or something. So we want to keep that fold there. So place a pin here and here to anchor that fold in place for the next step. Once you have that pinned, you're going to take the whole thing, you can pinch it, flip it over. I still have this line here because I used a water-soluble pen, so it's not going to go away quite yet, so you can ignore that little line. And at this point, you're just doing this to check to see now if you're happy with the position. So you should be able to see that you have that opening there. It shouldn't be extending way up in there, but it shouldn't be leaving a gap either. So it should be exactly fitting into that spot. So at this point, you can see the right side of your pocket here, but down here, it's still the wrong side. From here, holding your bodice, flip your bodice up right sides together. So again, you can see here's my main right side of my bodice. When I flip it up over itself right at this seam line, I'm just kind of sandwiching that part. And now I can see the seam allowance here again. So I have the seam allowance from the bodice here. If I were to lift up this portion of the pocket, you can see the rest is sandwiched up in there. And from here, what you're going to do is take it to your sewing machine and you're going to stitch right here, directly below the seam that's already there. You can see your stitch line here. Your new stitch line should be about here. And you can think of it a little bit like understitching. You're stitching this part of your seam allowance to the pocket piece. You are not stitching anything up here. This stitching will not go through this part of your pocket or this part of your bodice. This stitching is only going through this portion of your seam allowance and this portion of your pocket. So you're going to go take this to your sewing machine and sew right there. Okay, so I have stitched the pocket to the seam allowance right there. And now I can flip it all down again. And from the right side of the bodice, so again, it had been like this. You can now really clearly see my stitch line. Now, when I took my pins out, I'll fold this back down. Now my fold here is anchored from that stitch, which is why you can take your pins out. Press it really well. If you like the aesthetic of a top stitched pocket, you will do that now. Top stitching this pocket is not required for construction. It will function the same either way. The top stitching is going to be purely a style choice. So if you like the aesthetic of top stitching around a welt pocket, you'll do that now. And you will stitch right around here. If you decide to do that, make sure that this portion of your pocket is fully down here. Be very careful of that. It shouldn't be flipped up anywhere or it will get caught. The other thing you need to be careful of if you decide to top stitch your pocket is to make sure you don't sew your pocket closed. So that means that where this is, remember, it comes right to this edge here. So if you're going to top stitch, make sure that this is out of the way when you top stitch up here so that this opening here does not get closed. So go ahead and press that really well, top stitch if you would like to. Okay, so we've pressed this well. If you wanted top stitching, you've done that. And now we're going to flip the whole thing over. So once it's flipped over, first make sure everything is nice and smooth and flat, right where you want it. Now we're going to go ahead and close the pocket bag. You're going to take the opposite short edge and fold it up so that it matches this raw edge here. So go ahead and fold that up. You're folding the pocket right sides together and you're lining up the two short edges with each other. And make sure your pocket is aligned where you want it. My fabric rolls quite a bit, so I have to keep flattening that out. Make sure that is all nice, just like that. And now you're going to pin or clip it. If you have clips, I think they're easier at this point. And what you're doing is you are clipping the pocket to itself. These clips are not going through my bodice at all, see? I'm only clipping my pocket to itself. Down here is folded, so you don't need to clip there or pin. You can pin too. I just find clips really handy for this part. Now up at the top, when I'm going to clip up here, this is the important part. If I were to fold up this part of the pocket, I have my fold that comes to the opening is right there. And then I have this part from sewing it to at the very beginning, my seam allowance there, and underneath all of that are the little triangles. And there's a triangle notch from the pocket piece and from the bodice. There's two of those. When you are pinning right up in here, it is really important that you catch those in your pins or clips. So when you do that, get all of that all the way down. See how my clip caught that triangle? Make sure you do that on both sides so that your clip gets all of that. There we go. Yeah, just like that. Then once you have that to where it's getting your triangle tab on each side, you can also pin the top. When you're pinning or clipping the top, you are pinning through 2 layers of pocket, this one and this seam allowance. So again, we have pocket on the sides without the bodice, including the triangle tabs, and through all those folds here and here. And at the top, your pins or clips are catching this part of the bodice seam allowance. So that's all the different parts that your pins or clips need to make sure you catch. From there, you're going to flip the entire thing over. Now, take your bodice and fold it however you need to get it fully to the inside of where all your pinning and clipping is, like that. I just kind of leave it like that, but you could also just stick a couple pins in it if you want to. If you find that easier, go for it. You can just take a pin and kind of work it in like that just to kind of help hold it in place. Now you're ready to sew your pocket bag shut. The very first step is to sew down this little short side right here over that tab, and again right here. So your line that you stitch will start above that triangle, go right down over the triangle, and end below the fold that created the welt opening. So from above the triangle to below the fold, about maybe an inch long, and you're going to do that on both sides. Go ahead and take it to your sewing machine and do that now. Okay, so now I've done that. You can see there, and the reason we're doing that is to just anchor down this tricky part that has all these folds and these triangle tabs. Now we know that's secure. So now you can finish sewing that pocket bag shut. You're going to sew up a side, across the top, and back down. And again, this is already folded, so you don't need to worry about sewing across there. Throughout all of that, you're sewing the pocket. You are not sewing this part of the bodice at all. Make sure that's out of the way. Up at the top edge, make sure that you are going right through this part of the bodice seam allowance, this blue here that's pinned up, going through all of that. You can use a sewing machine or a serger for this. Okay, so I have serged around those sides of my pocket. Make sure that if you do use a serger, you secure these top corners in whatever way you like. I just pulled them tight and tied a knot. It's okay if these tails are still there. You'll take care of those later. But this corner and this corner are not going to be further enclosed anywhere, so those you want to make sure are tied off securely. So if you pinned the middle of your bodice, go ahead and remove that pin. And then from there, you can unfold everything. And now you're going to want to go press this again really well. And that's it. Your welt pocket is done. You may have some pocket overhang over here by the center line of your bodice, and that's totally okay. That's going to get secured later on in the pattern. I hope you found this video tutorial helpful, and I can't wait to see your finished project.